listening to the best of the Martha Zoller Show. To hear the full show each day, tune in to AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN or log in to accesswdun.com and click the Listen Live button from 9 to 11 Monday through Friday. It is really my pleasure to talk to my next guest, and we're going to start out with this because her schedule is very, very busy. Dr. Karen Gersch is a thoracic surgeon at Northeast Georgia Health System, and she specializes in, all things thoracic surgery, but especially in early detection of lung cancer. And as you guys know, I lost my mom and my sister and my father to lung cancer, and so I've been an advocate in this community and anywhere I can get anybody to listen to me about early detection of lung cancer. I had a friend actually about 10 years ago that was pretty young, 37 years old, 3 kids. He had a bicycle accident and went to the emergency room and got a chest x-ray. And in the hospital where he went, they did an extra scan and found 3 spots on his lungs. And they turned out to be adenosine carcinoma, and they went in and took him out. And he's now, 10 years older, and his kids are 10 years older. So Karen Gersch, Dr. Karen Gersch, welcome.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So tell folks a little bit about you and then about the program.
Well, I am a cardiac and thoracic surgeon. I specialize in robotics and minimally invasive, and I did 2 separate pathways in training, both cardiac pathway and a thoracic pathway, and then I did another extra year of studying just to do robotic-specific surgery. So I do thoracic oncology, which is cancer of the chest, and heart surgery. So when I've been here for 3 years in May. I came from Charleston. I was recruited here by a wonderful group of folks, and I came to Northeast Georgia because we had like-mindedness, meaning that everyone at that institution really strives for what's next. How can we be better? How do we embrace technology? How can we deliver excellent care to our people and the community? And even though the hospital has grown and grown and grown, the mission is this is our community and these are the people we love. And that just resonated with me, where I felt like this, I need to be here. And I have no regrets for coming. When I first stepped foot in the hospital, I'd already spoken to Dr. April McDonald, who I absolutely love. She's one of our interventional pulmonologists, brilliant, and many of the other pulmonologists. And one of the targeted things we had our laser focus on was early detection of lung cancer, because this area of the world, people are dying unnecessarily with lung cancer, and there's no reason for it. Not with the technology that we have to identify people who have cancer, treat them, and truly treat them, offer surgery. I do lung cancer surgeries almost every day using robotic technology, and my patients, whether they're 56 or 88, go home the next day, and they're driving their car 2 or 3 days later. So we said, let's target, where are we failing? Where are we dropping the ball? And it really was early detection, where we weren't ordering the low-dose lung CTs for our patients early enough. And the folks who were coming into the hospital where maybe you fell off your four-wheeler and broke your collarbone.
Or like my friend that fell off a bicycle.
Absolutely. Those folks come in for one reason, and then, incidentally, we see a pulmonary nodule or something in your lung. Well, we need a dedicated pathway so those people don't get lost in the shuffle, because we serve 1 million plus people, and the last thing we want to do is lose you in the shuffle, but it can happen. So we said, heck no, we're going to develop an AI-driven pathway that's smart, and we identify people who come in, offer their ATV with a broken arm, and then next thing you know, they have a pulmonary nodule. We are going to capture those people and follow them and reach out to their primary doctor, reach out to them and say, hey, you have this nodule of concern. We need to follow you. And we've instituted that policy, and I'm proud to say that we have shifted the stage of cancer. Stage is really predicated on how big is the cancer, where is it located, is it in the lymph nodes inside of your lung, is it in the lymph nodes outside of your lung, is it elsewhere? So the higher stage, we don't want that. We don't want a stage 3, stage 4. We want solid stage 1, stage 2. We have shifted the stage from stage 3 to stage 4 down to stage 1, stage 2. If you are diagnosed with a stage 1 lung cancer, you're going to be alive at 5 years and 10 years, no question. If you are diagnosed with stage 4, you're absolutely not. So we were like, we're going to shift this, and we have in just a year's time. So we're super excited about shifting the stage and making certain that the folks of our community know that we've got your back. Well, actually, lungs. We got your lungs. We're going to take care of you, and we're proud of this.
Yeah, that's so exciting to me because the incidental finding the incidental coverage, because you know what I learned the hard way through my family history is that it usually doesn't get diagnosed until late, even if you go to the doctor regularly, even if do all those kinds of things.
Correct.
And there's not a lot you can do. My dad was diagnosed in May of 1991. He died in August of 1991. Okay, now he played golf till 10 days before he died. And I have said many times, even though he was only 81, which is a lot closer than it used to be, that if I could have the life he had, I would take it, but still, and he died on his own terms, he stayed alert and all that until the very end. But still, it was quick. It was 3 months. Correct. My mom and my sister, weirdly enough, now he had small cell. His was smoking related. They had adenocell, and they were diagnosed within 2 months of each other, and they died within 2 months of each other 2 years later. And it was so crazy because then people started asking us, like, was your house built on radon or something like that? Was there some environmental thing that happened?
Absolutely, that's a big, and this is every human in this country has this story.
Yes.
Where your loved one was diagnosed with a cancer after they had symptoms, whether they were coughing up blood or they had a pain in their shoulder. When you have symptoms,
it's too late.
It's too late. It's advanced stage. Lung cancer is very silent. So if you have a risk, and the pink elephant in the room is what it is, it's smoking. Yes. Are you a smoker? We get rid of the house of shame that you think you live in with smoking. Just get rid of that. We're not going to cast shame on you for smoking. It is what it is, but we want you to come in and live. So if you're a smoker and you're the age of 50 to 80 and you have potentially stopped in the last 15 years, but you're still 50 to 80, you have stopped within the last 15 years or not, and you have a 20-pack year history of smoking. 20-pack year means I smoked 2 packs a day for 10 years or 1 pack a day for 20 years. You kind of get the math?
Yeah.
If you are that person, do not put your head in the sand. You are at risk. If you have that criteria, insurance will pay for a low-dose lung CT. And you're not going to be radiated where you're going to be glowing when you leave the hospital. No, these CTs are low-dose. They're very safe, but they save lives. If we detect an early stage cancer, a stage 1 cancer, and treat you, you have every reason to be alive and happy and successful and living your life 10 years from now. That's what we want. We want to be able to deliver you through a surgery. We want to be able to deliver you through any type of treatment, and we can. Now, if you have higher stages, fortunately, for the first time in civilization, we are beating cancer because of genetics, immune-mediated therapies, all this new technology, which is great. But we don't even want you to take that stuff. We want you to still be in the low stage so we can just cure you with surgery or some type of other radiation, depending on your how you physically are fit. If you fall into a higher stage, we do have better technology and medications to give you a better quality of life and longevity. But the real important thing, you have to know your risk. You have to know your risk. 50 to 80, have a 20-pack year smoking history? Yes. But I stopped 10 years ago. It doesn't matter. You still qualify for a low-dose lung CT. Go to your primary doctor, talk to them about it, get it done. Don't be scared. If something pops up, for gosh sakes, let us take care of it. And we can. Surgery, we do not make big holes in you anymore. Those days are long gone. I am not putting my hands inside of your chest. That is not going to happen. I have little tiny robotic instruments that the robot is driven by me. It is very smart, but I am smarter, and I still drive the robot. but that affords us minimally invasive small port sites, no broken bones, no spreading of the ribs. I literally lose about a 30 cc medicine cup. You give your kids Tylenol in a 30 cc medicine cup. That's about how much blood we lose in our surgery. It's crazy, ridiculously, just so technologically fantastic. And patients go home literally the next day completely back to normal. So don't be scared of the results of the low-dose lung CT. Just get it done.
We're talking to Dr. Karen Gersch today, and I mean, it's obvious she's a female thoracic surgeon, which is a pretty small subset, okay? My husband always said thoracic surgeons are like at the top of the top. Like you're like everybody that goes to medical school is smart, but the people like you are really smart. So that's what he said. So it's great. But let's talk a little bit about heart health, okay? Because did we... are women different as far as their heart health goes, or has the training just been different?
That's yes and yes. I think that women, a lot of the studies have traditionally been focused on Caucasian men.
Yes.
So there's there's a bunch of different demographics who weren't really in those studies. First, second, women primarily are the caregivers of their family. And in doing that, we neglect ourselves. So we oftentimes show up late with a problem. We're smaller, our arteries are smaller, everything's smaller. It's technically more difficult to fix us oftentimes because of these reasons. And then by the time we show up, we have a more advanced problem. And I think that holds the reason for this is that we are moms, we are sisters, we are moms, we
caregivers.
Correct. And we're pulled in a lot of different directions. And I'm as guilty as anybody else of just doing routine stuff, mammograms, colonoscopy, all of that stuff. We're so late in doing that, and we oftentimes don't pay attention to our health of our heart. Then we don't pay attention to our symptoms, because they're different than men. Men oftentimes have very different symptoms than us. That crushing chest pain that radiates to your jaw and down your arm. Women don't necessarily have that. We have kind of upset stomach. I've got this gastric reflux. I have this kind of discomfort in my chest. I think it's reflux, or they're different symptoms. And we look past that. So risk. We need to know our risks. Do you have high blood pressure? Do you have high cholesterol? Do you have diabetes? Are you a smoker? Are you obese? Do you have those risk factors? And it's a yes or no.
Yes.
Yes. If you have those risk factors, then we need to be aware of the cardiac implications and seek attention, seek advice. Go to your primary doctor and say, not only am a little overweight and I've got diabetes and I have high blood pressure, but my mom died at 68. My dad was 70. They had heart problems. All of these things mean something. You know you better than you.
Yeah.
It's better to go and be evaluated and have a baseline and fix a problem before it's a problem. And we don't do that. We have school pickup and drop off and sports, and we have a tendency to focus on other things and not ourselves. So we don't take care of ourselves like we should. Absolutely, we need to be better at that.
But women go to the doctor more.
Women do go to the doctor more for often
basic things.
Screening. We all know we need a mammogram.
Yeah.
We all know that we need a colonoscopy. But we aren't always aware of the risk factors for heart disease. We're not aware of the risk factors for lung cancer. So we do these other screening measures that have been beaten into our heads. Interestingly enough, which not to any way minimize breast cancer, but you'd have to screen 650 women to find one breast cancer. And for lung cancer, only about 250 before you find one. And same with heart. We're not paying attention to these issues as much as other issues.
Yeah, and I'm guilty of that. I have big lumpy breasts, and so when I go to get mammograms, it has not been unusual over the course of my lifetime to come up with something that they want to look at further. You know, because, and then, the first 5 or 6 times I did it, it was nothing. And so then you think, do I really need to do this follow-up? It's a lot of hassle and all that. And last year it happened again. And so I ended up having a little biopsy. It was nothing. It was all fine. And, everything was good. But you do, it's frustrating sometimes.
Yeah.
Because all the screening and all the stuff, but you still need to do it. The one time you don't do it, then it was the time you needed to do it.
Yeah, if we're blessed with age, if we're blessed with age, then we need to screen, because there is sometimes our body is not as efficient in correcting a problem as it was at 25 and 35 and 45.
Yeah, I'm feeling that. That's for sure. It was funny because my mom lived to be 80, almost 89, and all of her siblings died in their 70s. And because she left the lifestyle, the kind of like high-fat food, and everybody, my Aunt Gwen, man, was a fantastic cook, but she did not live very long. And I say fantastic, but I don't eat those kind of foods now. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
I've really changed the kind of foods that I eat, and I'm just trying to be healthy and,
and active.
Healthy and wise and active. And I kind of think that it's, you got to eat right. You got to do what you, now my sleep cycle is going to be always messed up because of the job I have. But you try to eat right, and you need to be aware of what you're doing that you shouldn't be doing.
That's right. And active. We really need to.
And just moving. It doesn't have to be
exactly
like running a marathon.
Correct. No, we really need to really look at our cardio health. And 30 minutes every day of walking, not necessarily on the elliptical, breaking a sweat and not able to talk, but really to get to the point where it is a little harder to talk, but you can still talk and carry on a conversation. We need you to be active.
Yeah.
And that's
so it's funny. We've lived in the same house for 30 years, and our bedroom is upstairs, and a lot of our friends go, "Oh, don't you want a master on the main?" I was like, "No, I'm going to keep my master upstairs for as long as I can. I've got some main level bedrooms that if I have to someday I can move down to, but at least I know I'm going to climb the stairs 5 or 6 times a day."
That's right.
You know what I mean?
It's so protective. I tell my patients, I'm a big exercise person, and I tell my patients all the time, when they go home post-op day 1, if I do surgery on Monday, they're going home Tuesday, and I tell them, when you get home, after your lung surgery, and my heart surgery patients go home post-op day 2 because I do it robotic, I say you're going to do 10 minutes nonstop cardio, walking around the house, to the garage, to the mailbox, 10 minutes 3 times a day at minimum.
Yes.
At minimum.
Yes.
And that's immediately after surgery. And my patients adhere to it. They come back and their chest x-ray looks good. Their mending is so important. So don't pass that up as a nothing. Exercise is very, very important.
Well, I mean, that's been a huge change in joint replacement, which is, I know, not yours, but when my mom got her hip replaced, I think they kept her in the bed for like 2 weeks.
Oh, yeah. We don't.
I mean, they don't do that anymore.
No.
I got my knees replaced, and in both cases, when I woke up, went in at 5:30 in the morning, I woke up with the first one. I had they needed to put some fluid in me, so it was like 10 o'clock. And then it was like 9:30 with the second one. They asked, "How many stairs do you have to go into your house?" "Okay, get up.
Right.
And climb the stairs, and then you're home, and then you're doing everything." But I will admit, I do lie about whether I've gone to the bathroom or not. I just, I just say, "Yeah, I have." Okay, because I want to go home. So I'll admit that I do that.
It's interesting because I do with the minimally invasive, my lung surgery folks immediately after surgery are up and walking. Same thing with heart surgery; they're up and walking.
So if people should they go to their primary care first and then they get referred to you?
Correct. It's hard to get a self-referral to us. Primary care first. Absolutely.
Yes. It's local radio, and that's why you're listening. It's the Martha Zoller Show on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN.
The American people are with Nicki Minaj, because what are we talking about here? So take a look here. Favor voter ID to vote. Look, I got all this polling on the screen going back since 2018. You'll notice on all of it, it's all north of 75%, 76%, 76%, 76%, 81%, and then 83% in the last year of Americans agree with Nicki Minaj. They favor photo ID to...
It is the Martha Zoller Show, and I'm here with Senator Greg Dolezal. And I picked that clip, Greg, because I love Harry Enton, because he's on CNN and he always is putting data out there that I know they don't want to hear. So I think it's always great. So he's talking voter ID. We're talking about the SAVE Act on the federal level. We're talking about a lot of other things related to that. And then, of course, last week, the announcement of the property tax bill kind of got buried because there was the raid on Fulton County. So you are really knowledgeable about the Fulton County stuff as well as what led up, and you gave such a great case about how they got to that point. And that's why I wanted to have you on. He's also running for lieutenant governor, folks. He's Senator Greg Dolezal, and welcome.
Great to be with you, Martha. Yeah, what I like to say is it's not only Fulton County, but it's always Fulton County. And whether you look at 2020 or whether you look at 2026 or whether you look at 2024, elections in Fulton County are a complete mess. I drove around Fulton County just last week and visited locations where hundreds of people are illegally registered to vote. At UPS stores, at empty abandoned houses, at a homeless shelter that hasn't been open since 2017. And it's just the fact that I can find it in an afternoon of working with some election integrity activists and drive around and locate these locations, but years later Fulton County hasn't done anything. It shows they're not serious about secure elections. We know that because every Democrat in Georgia voted against voter IDs when we passed it in Senate Bill 202. They all voted against my bill to change the Georgia Constitution to ensure that only American citizens could vote in Georgia elections. And now we know it's true because their voter rolls are a complete mess full of people that shouldn't be on there.
So in 2006, to your point, not Fulton County only, but Fulton County always, Karen Handel was Secretary of State, and they passed the original bill for voter ID back in 2006. She was sitting in the chair you're sitting in, and we were talking about it, and she said, Martha, my problem with the bill is that they didn't do anything about absentee ballots. And she told the truth about it. It was only 1% of the vote, and mostly Republicans voted absentee back in 2006 because it wasn't no reason absentee. You know, you were traveling, you were away on business, and that just lent itself to Republicans using it at that point in time 20 years ago. And she said, one day the Democrats are going to figure out a way to drive a Mack truck through that loophole. And that's what they did. Now, I would argue, and you may disagree with me, that a loophole doesn't mean that anybody broke the law. It means they used the loophole within the law because the law wasn't written right. Now, I know a lot of people get mad at me for saying that, but I think we opened the door for this to happen. The problem, in my view, was not the voting machines. There were some problems, but the big problem, because when we went to sleep on election night 2020, Trump was ahead by 3.5 million votes on mostly electronic voting machines. The problem was when all the other votes got counted.
Yeah, and keep in mind, though, on the law side, that in 2020, Brad Raffensperger, using the executive powers that he had under the COVID emergency order, changed the functionality of the way that elections would work in the state of Georgia. He invented drop boxes out of thin air. He sent out over 6 million absentee ballot request forms that was nowhere envisioned in Georgia law. Previously in that year, he had signed the settlement agreement to make it much, much harder to reject an absentee ballot for a signature mismatch. And I don't know if you remember this or not, but back in 2020, I tested the system. I botched my signature. I signed my signature and requested a ballot in a way that no way resembled any signature they would have had on file. And sure enough, the ballot came in. We had a number of other people do that around the state. And in every single instance, I had a friend who had his child sign their absentee ballot request form. And in every single instance, the ballot came in the mail. Only 2,000 out of 1.3 million absentee ballots were rejected for a signature mismatch.
Well, I'll tell you a worse thing. Back before 2020, I called up, I won't say which voter office I called up, and I got all of my kids' absentee ballots sent to me just by me calling up on the phone and saying, but they said, we have to send it to the address on file, which was my address. I wasn't cheating or anything, but I should have filled a form out, but I still got the ballots.
Yeah. And in 2020, you went from 180,000 people in 2016 voting absentee by mail to 1.3 million people. So it was an eightfold increase.
The worst thing was sending the application to everybody.
100%.
You know, you should have had to ask for it if you needed one. And even though that has its own problems too, the sending the application out to everyone. And then there was this group called, I think Project Vote Smart was the name of the group. And they were sending things out. It was a Stacey Abrams group. It was like an ancillary one. They were sending things out in predominantly Republican areas, sample ballots that looked really real. And there were people that sent them in. And there is no way to know if they, because they were just thrown away because they weren't real ballots. And there's no way to know how many of those people did that. And then when Election Day came, they thought, oh, I already voted. Yeah. I don't need to vote. There's nothing. We will never know the answer to that question because there's no record of it, except for the fact that reported that, hey, I got this sample or I got this ballot in the mail. And I said, well, you should never get a ballot in the mail without requesting it. I mean, it probably happens, but you shouldn't.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm reminded as well of going back to It's Always Fulton County. Fulton County used some Zuckerberg money and stood up these mobile voting units, which essentially is an RV, and they drove this RV around to certain precincts in Fulton County. 81% Democrat precincts is where they magically ended up essentially doing this live ballot harvesting.
So what do you think is the issue? Because I'll be honest, I'm more of a look forward, don't look back. Let's just make sure it's fixed now. I admit that, but what should we get out of what just happened in Fulton County?
We should move to election day, not election month. We should move to hand-marked paper ballots that are hand-verified at a minimum. We need to have laws in place that punish these local municipalities who do not enforce the cleaning of their voter rolls. You have dirty voter rolls mean dirty elections. And so right now I have zero confidence that by the time we're voting later this year that Fulton County is going to clean their voting rolls.
So what about the argument that if you do all hand ballots, that, someone could just walk by and put a stray mark on the ballots and then they're no good?
Yeah, I think that we need to have serialized ballots where you essentially have non-identifiable serial numbers that are not tied to the voter, but are tied to a legitimate ballot number. And that way, when you can scan those and check those and ensure essentially, all right, this serial number is a legit ballot number. There's a number of things that we can do, including having security paper and a number of other things that will ensure that we can do what the Secretary says we actually have, which is we don't have, which is have the most secure elections in America.
So help me on Coffee County and what happened down there, because my colleague on the Georgia gang, Kathy Woolard, brings that up all the time. And as I understand it, there was access given to some of the machines, but what happened there?
There was access given to the machines. You can go right now on the internet and download the Dominion voting system. We are the only state in the union that uses Dominion machines statewide. We're still using Dominion version 5.5A, which was originally certified in 2018, first used in Georgia in 2020. Well, since then, CISA, which is the Cyber Intelligence Security Administration, which is a Department of Homeland Security division, they've identified 9 known vulnerabilities in that version 5.5A. They then give states a number of recommendations of what they should do. Number one of which is update the software. And we haven't done it.
We're going to talk a little bit about legislation, but we've got a couple questions for you from listeners, so I want to get to those right now.
Great.
Kathy in Gainesville said, my mom helped with elections in Michigan in the 1970s when we had hand-marked ballots. I remember specifically how a ballot had to be marked. It had to have an X. A check-marked ballot was not counted, or if it was a partially marked X, it was not counted. If we thought hanging chads caused a furor, what would that do?
So we obviously have technology today, and you remember there's in every state in the union almost you can vote with the paper ballot. Ironically, I'll tell you the funniest thing about this whole thing.
Yeah.
The funniest thing about this whole thing for me, my dad's retired, but his last job was he was a paper ballot salesman. And so he literally would work for a printing company, and he would go call on county clerks, and he would sell them paper ballot printing services. And so in Japan, for example, they use machines that will sort the hand-marked paper ballots by race very, very quickly. You count those by hand. You then do the sort for the next race, count those by hand. It's not your hanging chad days, and it's not your days of having to be an X. It's still a circle. The same way, by the way, that we had 1.8 million ballots in Georgia, just in 2020. So you still have a lot of people voting by hand-marked paper ballot in the state today, and there has not been any reports of issues with those in the previous elections.
And Carolyn from Flowery Branch said, my question is how old people like me going to vote without absentee ballots. I'm in a wheelchair, and I have to call a cab to get to the place I vote. I have physically handled not a thing wrong in my mind, and I vote for my grandchildren and great-grandchildren in the future. My days are numbered. But you can get, that's an easy way.
I love it. Keep voting.
Yeah, keep voting.
Keep voting. We will, if we do what I'm talking about, which is moving to election day and getting rid of no excuse absentee voting, because right now in Georgia we've got election month.
Yes.
We've got 20 days of early voting, and voting by mail is by nature less secure than voting in person. So what we would have to have is provisions for sick people, elderly people, infirm people to still be able to vote not in person, but that would be a limited provision that got rid of essentially this open season where there's millions of ballots flying around via mailboxes.
So what about the staffing that would be needed for one day of voting because, we're a lot bigger state than we were when we last did that, the 1 day of voting. And, I generally vote early because I'm usually working on Election Day. But I would vote on Election Day if that's all we had.
Sure.
It just, but I'm usually working all day on Election Day.
Yeah, you give me the challenge of having to figure out volunteers for 1 day versus volunteer for 20 days. I'll take the challenge of figuring out volunteers for 1 day.
Okay, that sounds great. Interesting, very interesting. Now, let's talk a little bit about the two, I think, are going to be the two hot button issues. I don't think we're going to have one of those big social issues, but we might, and I have one to ask you about. But what about the property tax provision that was announced last week, or bill that was announced last week? You think that there's any chance of that this session?
I think we're going to have to get something done on property taxes. It's the number one issue I've been hearing about.
Is that because of the confusion of the last bill?
Yes, it is. And the Senate passed a clean version that didn't have any opt-outs, and that went across the hall. And in the sausage-making process that you're very familiar with, this opt-out got added, and then you had these local battles happening. And so just yesterday, actually, the Senate passed a bill that goes back to our original position, which does not allow local governments to opt out from the annual cap on property tax assessments. And zooming out, you've just got to think about the nature of taxing unrealized gains and the frustration that people have when they're getting these year-over-year double-digit property tax increases. It's insane. And we've got to give them relief. We've got to force these local governments to go on a diet because they've been, frankly, pigs at a trough.
But this does not impact education property tax, correct?
It is. But
or it will?
It will. And it allows local school boards to have their budgets grow by the rate of inflation.
Okay.
Which, frankly, is the same thing that every American family is having to do.
Right.
And so if you look at local governments, that they've had 50% budget increases in 3 years at the school board level, and they're acting as if the tax digest just magically creates the exact amount of money they need to run the school system. And it's just not true.
So the other issue is data centers. It is the buzzword. AI and data centers are like the buzzwords of the day. I think a lot of things that people call AI aren't actually AI, but that's what it is. So there are a lot of concerns. I kind of think, and I think you agree with me on this, is that they're coming, so we might as well make sure they come right.
Make sure they come right. Stop giving them tax abatements. Right now, the state of Georgia is paying out about $700 million a year, or we're foregoing $700 million a year in state-level abatements. That means that the average Georgian went to work for the first 2 weeks of January and paid their state income tax just to offset what we're giving the data centers for free. And as you know, they're coming here anyway. The other thing is that we should be doing is I introduced a bill this week, actually, to allow data centers to be taxed at a different millage rate than residential property owners, which is not currently allowed into law. So if a local municipality wants to, they could decide to have a data center come, keep the tax level the same for the data center, and eliminate property taxes for the local residential homeowners. And that's the kind of thing we need to do in terms of thinking outside the box as to how to deal with this 2026 challenge.
And I know a lot of people, especially around here, we're on Lake Lanier, they're concerned about the water side of this. As I understand it, now I know in this world we live in today, the facts don't matter, okay? People, if they want to get excited about something, they're going to do it, and they're going to use their own facts sometimes. This is how I understand it. Yes, these data centers use a lot of water for cooling, but there is some evaporation as it goes through, but it's a process where it goes through and then it goes back into the lake or the reservoir, wherever it's coming out of. Is that right?
I think so, but you still have to deal with your sewer capacity. Most municipalities have local sewer capacity limits that
yes.
might bump up against. The bigger thing that I hear about from people is concerns about power consumption. The average Georgian has had their residential power bill go up $480 a year just over the last 2 years. And some of that is due to the Plant Vogtle increases that we saw, and a lot of the Plant Vogtle capacity went towards large load customers. So one thing that the PSC, Georgia Power, the state legislature, between all of us, we've got to figure out is ensuring that no residential ratepayer, no homeowner, is paying for capacity expansion so that Amazon or Google can come build some mega data center in Georgia.
That's a good point. Very good point. Okay, so this is my personal issue. I've been working for years to get the restrictions back around the abortion pill. In 2020, during COVID, a lot of drugs that required in-person visits, like opioids and things like that, but including the abortion pill, got taken out of that group where women could do telemedicine or they wouldn't have to actually see a doctor. all of those other drugs have been put back to where you have to see a doctor in person. The Biden administration did not put the abortion pill back that way. And I've talked to all my federal people about it too, because it's really, it's on my heart, because if we care about women's health, and I talked to the Democratic Women's Caucus, and they agree with me when I talk to them individually, and then they will never let me speak in front of their group, okay? Because I think they should be natural allies if they care about women's health, and here's why. This is a drug that induces a certain reaction, which causes you to bleed. It causes a miscarriage. And now you can get it without ever seeing a doctor or following up with a doctor. And to me, all you need to know, and I'm pro-life, I don't like it at all, okay? But if it's going to be legal, I want it to be safe. It's got a 7% complication rate, which we wouldn't allow with any other kind of drug. And, you know, Planned Parenthood requires you to come back the next day to be checked to be sure everything's okay. That's all you need to know about the safety of the drug. If Planned Parenthood says you got to come back the next day to be sure you're not having complications, then we should require that women have an in-person visit and a follow-up, because the two women that were used against us in the 2024 election were because they did not see a follow-up, and then they go to the emergency room and it was too late to save them.
Yeah, we've got to keep working on this issue. You and I talked about this last time I was here.
I know.
we passed this out of the Senate a couple years ago. The late Bruce Thompson, this was a passion of his. I was on the committee when he came and presented this to committee, was happy to vote for it. Sounds like we need another champion for that issue, and that's something I'll talk to my colleagues about today, because, you know, I'm with you. I believe life begins at conception. I believe that we need to recognize the sanctity of life from the very beginning of human development. But as it exists under current law, this is something that's putting women in danger that we should certainly address at the state level. I hope the feds deal with it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And anything I can do to help you in that area, I would be happy to do that. I'm still on the board. Well, I've just resigned from the board of Georgia Life Alliance because Claire Bartlett passed away in December, and we've had to change our organization because of that. But we're going to be back, so don't worry about that. But it's a challenge, and it's something that's really important to me. You're running for lieutenant governor. If people want to help you, how can they do that?
They can find me at Dolezal for GA on X, and GregDolezal.com is my website. It's a weird last name.
But it's kind of spelled the way it sounds.
Yeah, Dolezal. It's a Czech name.
Any of us with the Z's in our names, they don't know what to do.
The Z Alliance, or the Z Caucus.
Yeah, absolutely. And he can't raise money during the session, but but you can learn more about him.
Absolutely. We'd love to meet your listeners and have conversations with them. I live just down the road in Forsyth County, so let's get a local boy elected.
To hear the full versions of last week's Martha Zoller shows, go to the podcast page at accesswdun.com, and you can follow me on social media at Martha Zoller.